Hi, everyone. Chris Principe, publisher of IT, coming to you direct from Sibos 2025. This is the SWIFT event every year in a different part of the world. Every year, the meeting spot for all international banking. And in this year, where we're meeting at? Frankfurt, Germany, one of the financial capitals of the world. And I'm here right now with one of the giants of the industry, my good friend Jaco.
Chris, thank you so much for this very kind introduction. Lovely to be here at Sibos. Lovely to meet you again. I know we've met all around the globe, over the years. And I'm really happy to be here and to welcome you to our stand over here, which for us is the first time ever, where we actually are promoting our software, which is basically, we're challenging the status quo for trade finance software for banks operations. And basically, we want to make sure that we have a sensible alternative for banks who are either have a legacy system that they just have to, solve, address, or for those banks who are having a vendor and have a system in place, but they come up to renewal and they think, okay, maybe there's something else out there that can, maybe lower our cost, put us more in control, and also make us future-proof. And that's basically what we do, and that's actually what we find here when we talk to, banks and all those people, even of the press, who ask us about, okay, why are you here? It is basically to show that there are alternatives out there for the existing system providers.
Jaco, that was a great introduction to TradeWiz. It's a company that everyone should be looking at right now, especially in trade finance. And for me, I grew up in trade finance, so I'm loving this stuff. I really like what these guys are doing. I've seen it over the years really mature and develop. It's now in some banks who are using it and benefiting from your technology. So give us an idea of what are the challenges that you're solving.
Okay, so basically talking about history, right? I started off in trade finance, hence the gray hairs, 40 plus years ago when we were just having typewriters, and doing calculations of fees on, a pocket calculator. So things have changed, right?
Big tables with a lot of documents on the table.
Oh, yeah. Manual. And okay, so things have evolved over the years. SWIFT came in. That's why we're here at Sibos with standards. And, you have all these systems out there. But basically, the world is evolving, right? And so there are more challenges for the banks in terms of budgets, in terms of having knowledgeable people. People tend to, I stayed at the first bank for 25 years. People don't do that anymore. So you have knowledge gaps. You have to address, the fact that people are leaving. And also at the corporates, the clients using these trade transactions with the banks, they are not as experienced anymore because, again, they move on as well. So basically what we are trying to do with our technology is to think with the user, whether the user is a corporate client doing a letter of credit, a bank guarantee, a documentary collection. It guides the user on how to submit that transaction to the bank. And also at the banking side, the people, the staff knows about, this customer needs to be having this treatment, that pricing, the mail has to go to that and that email address. Those things should be done by a system. We call it standing instructions. And there's much more to tell about, how we think systems should be intelligent and how, in the end, the customer experience, so the UI and the UX, should be a pleasant one.
For me, it just brings home a lot of memories when you first were talking about, how I learned trade finance also. And, there's certainly a knowledge gap now, I would say, in the industry. You don't have people that are staying in that business. So banks, I think today, automation is even more important. How do you bring that for them?
It is. So automation is more and more important. Of course, trade finance historically is very labor intense. It's very paper intense. That's changing slowly. So you more and more have solutions that digitize documents and have electronic solutions. But also you have things like automated document checking. But still, from a bank perspective, you want to make sure that if you have tools like an external automated document checking tool, that is still linked to your back office environment, because you want to have an audit trail, right? You want to make sure as a bank that you can go back in time and look at what have I done, which decisions have my staff been taking, for instance, and do I have records of whatever has been done. So audit trails have become very important as well. Automation is more important. Compliance, the C word. Sorry to start about that. It's becoming a burden for all the banks. So you have to make sure you're in control. You have to make sure that your systems are reliable, that you can produce the right reporting internally and external. So it's yeah, coming back from the typewriter days, it's the products, the characteristics of the products are still the same. They still mitigate risk, they still enable payments and financing, but the whole area around it has evolved so much, and that's also why it requires new technology. And what we have is like product-agnostic technology as well. I can talk about that if you want as well.
Well, Jack, I want you to talk about it because, you just reminded me how excited we were when we first learned that there were highlight pens and post-it notes in trade finance, right? These were technology advancements. But today, you guys are taking it a whole different step.
Actually, my first experience with digitization in trade was when at the bank I was working at that time, we got a telephone with a keypad instead of, a round dial. So that was my first experience with digitization in trade. But to your point, these days, things are more advanced. And also what we say is from a solution product perspective, you have to be agnostic because things will change and things will change faster and faster. So you have to make sure that whatever solution you have, it is capable not only to cope with the current states, but also what's happening. And we can sort of predict what's going to happen, but we don't know it all, right? So that's why we say how the system is constructed with us, product agnostic. We have set, a letter of credit is a guarantee, is a collection, is a supply chain finance transaction. They all share elements. Either it's a message, it's an account entry, it's a commissions charge, it is a representation on the screen. It's all the same. The products behave differently, but the character of the handling is the same. And that's also how you can be future proof. And another thing, what's very important is connectivity, APIs, 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 APIs. Again, what we have done with the system is to make sure that we are thinking ahead on how to be able to connect to other systems with data. And that means for us that the core of our system needs to have structured data. For us, that means a canonical model. Basically, it means that, just take an example, you 200% understand a letter of credit. A letter of credit has a balance. When it's issued, let's say it's $100,000. It gets amended, increased. There's a drawing. That balance at any given time is important for the liability, for the fee calculation. You need to be able in the system to know exactly where is that data, where is that field in a crystal clear way. If you need it on a screen, if you need it for entry. That's why we spend so much time on the canonical model, single source of truth in the system that enables you to pretty much handle any situation in whatever you need from a business perspective.
Well, you know what I really like that I heard that you said there's really, it's the same family of products. There's really not a lot of differences. How you process is a little bit different, but you can really use the same code base across, which makes it so much more efficient and ready to go. And the other thing I think a lot of people don't realize in trade finance, how many different systems you really need to connect to. And if you think about it, one trade transaction can produce maybe 20 payments, maybe more out of it.
Correct.
So that's always very important.
Correct. And now you're just talking about the payments, which of course, correct. So when we work with the banks, inside the banks, we have to connect our system to the basic infrastructure of the bank, which is indeed the payments, but it's also the ledger. It is also the SWIFT connectivity. It is the compliance screening, right? It's up to 20, and some banks even have more systems that we have to connect to. And again, that it's very important for you to be able to connect to those systems. The core of your system should be crystal clear, and that's why we have the canonical model. Actually, what we do for the banks is that we offer to create those interfaces for the banks, that we take care of it. The banks do not have to adjust anything on their side, and we even do that at a fixed price per interface. Again, that's another thing when we maybe talk about budgets. Cost budgets are stressed these days with banks, right? It's not, the sky is no longer the limit. So if you can take away costs, efforts, and the burden, and you can give them a clear, budget, roadmap that they are going to have to take into account for their forecasting, how cool is that?
Well, I think for a lot of bankers, it'd be really cool to have fixed pricing instead of question marks and overruns, right? So that fixed pricing model you have, that in itself is like a game changer.
Exactly. So basically, we do two things. So we have a fixed pricing on the interfaces because we know trade finance, we know what needs to be in those interfaces, right? So that's not the question for us. The only thing is, the uncertainty is how does it need to connect to the bank? But we will fix that again in the fixed price. The other thing is the whole pricing component. What we do is what we've seen with other projects is, you have a big implementation phase, usually time and material based, and that can inflate
Always
exponentially, to really high, really high amounts. And we have said, no, we just have a subscription model. You start paying day one, but everything is included. The implementation, future upgrades, support, maintenance, and then again as a bank, you can clearly budget going forward, and it's just an OPEX. It's very easy.
And today the subscription model is so common in everything, like your Netflix movies, right, or your Amazon Prime. So it's a model that's easily understood.
Exactly. And the other thing is, you can also cancel it. Because again, we do not want to lock in the customers from a contract and a structure perspective. We want them to stay because they actually are happy, right? That they like it, that they're satisfied, and they want to continue using us. There shouldn't be any handcuffs, that say, okay, if you leave, there's going to be a penalty, or you have to stay at least 3, 5, 6, 7 years, because we've seen that as well.
Well, I think everyone should be checking out TradeWiz because it's built by trade bankers to master global trade. The future looks really bright. We really want to follow what TradeWiz will be doing in the future, and we will. Stay tuned. Jaco, thank you so much
Thank you
for
so
spending
much,
some time in
It was a
financial
pleasure,
IT.
as always. Thank you so much.
Chris Principe, Financial IT.